Good morning. Good morning. Good morning and welcome to Common Thread Church and also welcome to Contemplative Sunday. We're so glad to be here together and a special welcome to all newcomers, whether you're here for the first time or you've been coming for a few weeks or even for a few months. If you are here, you belong and we value you and welcome you as a newcomer. Particularly because we are a church that seeks to find support and companionship around questions instead of answers in the spiritual life. So, newcomers, you are our life's blood. You keep us honest. You keep us practiced in the art of welcoming the stranger. So if you would like to receive a welcome email, you can use the QR code or the link, and it will give you everything you need to make your way into our community. We are also a community that believes the spiritual journey requires mutual support and companionship. If you are on our app, you may have seen that several people in our community are dealing with hard times right now. So we want to remind you, as we do every week, that if you could use some of that these days, some support and companionship, please do reach out by the QR code or the email, or just find the library down the hallway, because after the service every week, we have a listener who stands at the door of the library. Today, actually, we also have snack and chat, so you're welcome to do both. Today, I am the listener, so I will stand down in front of the library for about 10 minutes after the service. You're welcome to grab something from snack and chat and come on down, or we will come back in here, and that is something that we encourage you to take advantage of every week. So, if I'm running late, just give me a little bit of a pause because I will be downstairs in the teen room too. Now, let us affirm, as we do every week, the nature of our commitment to each other. If you are here, you belong. We are, every one of us, carriers of the inner light. We are, every one of us, carriers of divine breath. And now I invite you to stand and pass the peace.
To play now. You want to play? Okay.
Good morning again, everyone. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Sue. Good morning. Good morning and welcome again to Contemplative Sunday. Real quick, we're going to run through the announcements. We've got a few things coming up this week. After the service today, if you're thinking on Zoom, and you can find the link to get in the comments there on the YouTube or on our website. Next Sunday, we will have a newcomers hybrid chat with Doug. So that means folks here in the room and folks online will be able to get together with Doug, who some of you don't even know yet, but you're going to be introduced to him soon. And great guy. Yeah. So I've heard he's a great guy. But that'll be happening after the service next week. And then in the afternoon, we will do our brew crew over at R&D Brewing. The following Saturday, we have the Artsy Group meetup. And the next morning, we will have the Centering Prayer group. We had Centering Prayer this morning. We had a good little crowd there. So if you come at 9:15, come, be present, get centered with us. Before we get to Super Bowl Sunday, which is February 11th. And that's really exciting. And it's also a big day in our community. Heather and I are going to take the second step here in our ordination process. Last year, you all stood up and agreed to support and love us, and this is our opportunity to commit ourselves to love and serve you with gladness and singleness of heart for the rest of our lives. And I'm really, really looking forward to that time with all of you. What's going to happen before that ordination ceremony is a Mardi Gras brunch. So for about 20, 30 minutes, we're going to have brunch here in the room. Live streamers, you can't have brunch with us, but we're working on something for you. So I just want you to know, we're not going to have you just looking at everybody eat king cake for half an hour, because that would stink. And then afterwards, a really important event here. We're going to form life story groups after we have a panel here in the service. We won't have a lesson that day, but we'll have some folks who've been doing life stories to kind of share what it's meant in their lives and encourage you to form a life story group after the service. If you want to find out any more details about anything that I just went through, you can find out one of three ways. It's on the app, it's on the website, or you can subscribe to our weekly email. Now, for the past month or two, several of us have gotten up here to speak about what Common Thread has meant to us in our lives and what our hopes are for the future. And so today I would like to invite Matt, who is he's on the board and he's our treasurer, to get up and speak about what Common Thread has meant to him and what his hopes are for the future. So come on up here, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you. Start my timer. So I'm Matt. For those that don't know, I've been coming to Common Thread since probably 2012. Our daughter's 10, so we've been here about 11 years now. And I remember Chelsea, my wife, sent several emails to different churches, and Doug was one of the only ones that responded, and Chelsea said he was the only one that sounded like he wanted us to come. So we came, and I remember our first Sunday here, he talked about the Roman Empire, and I thought, I like history. And so that was 11 years ago, and we've been coming ever since. I have not been here physically as much in the past, well, since COVID. With kids, it's been difficult, but we're trying to make an appearance once a month, and so they're here now, which is nice. So what has Common Thread meant to me? It's difficult to do it in such a short amount of time, but I think a good place to start would be the self-awareness and self-disclosure. So if anybody's seen the worksheet now, it's this beautiful masterpiece that has gone through about 50 different updates, and when I first started it with Doug, it was 3 questions, and that was it. And so I've been doing it for about 8 or 9 years now, along with conflict resolution, and I can say that it has helped in all areas of my life. It has helped with relationships at work. It's helped with relationships with kids. Our kids are actually to the age now where we can get more in depth with talking to them about feelings and things like that. And so it's helped out with that. When they were younger, I would sneakily do a worksheet with them, even though they didn't know I was doing it, which has helped. It's helped at work. It's helped with Chelsea. That I'm sure if you've ever heard Doug talk about it, it helped him and Denise a lot. I can say that it probably is one of the things that helped save my marriage, among other things. But it's just been really life changing. So that's the self-awareness. Another thing is the meditation. I kind of fell off the wagon for a bit, but I've started to get back into it. But it is, before I came to Common Thread, meditation was a kind of a woo-woo out there kind of thing. I'm sure for a lot of us growing up, meditation was heretical, which fits in here. But you know, it really is life-changing, and kind of what I envision in the future is one, just the kids' work here, I think, is so important. Having kids now that are 9 and 10 and seeing the work that Common Thread does and our plan for the future, I think is just so important. And it's another reason why we're trying to come back physically more, is because we teach the kids things and then we tell them, now what's going to happen is we talk this way at home and we can all sit down and have a conversation. But unfortunately, you're going to go out into the real world at school and it's not going to work like that. So it is, I think, coming here is a good place where they can meet other kids that are kind of thinking along the same lines. Because I talked to Chelsea, it's easy for us as adults to say, do it this way, but they're the ones that are going to school and dealing with the angst of elementary school and teenage and high school and all that kind of stuff. So I think what we're doing with the kids is hard to put into words. So I'm grateful for that. And the last point I'll touch on is it's an election year. So seeing how we navigate those things and how we think about folks, something that popped up into my mind when I was thinking was, it's better to light a candle than to curse the darkness. And so I think it's difficult at times to remember that, especially when we get into election years and the silos of think this way and think that way, and those people are this way and we are the good people. But I think what we do here is really try to break out of that thinking and think, more about oneness. And even though those people may think a certain way and they may be incorrect, they are still carriers of the divine. And if we can see that, not every time, but if we are able to see that at some point, I really think that, whatever happens, especially during election years, I think is really, really important. So having said all that, I've gone over my time. But Common Thread, it has just been, I didn't talk about all the friends that I've made here. Oh, okay. Well, fine. I've made a lot of friends here, and we hang out outside of church, which is weird for me because I'm introverted. But every time I meet with somebody, I think, I really don't want to meet, not because I don't like them, just because I don't like going out. But then I meet, and I'm like, oh, okay, that was fun. Let's do it again. Anyways, so Common Thread has just been a fantastic place of growth, of friendship, of seeing the world differently, of navigating difficult situations, saving relationships, improving relationships, all of that. And so I think I'll just end it by saying thank you to everybody that's here, that is stuck it out, that keeps coming. And I think that's all I got to say. So thank you.
Thank you. So, thank you, Matt. And just a reminder that investment in this community that Matt just spoke about, there's a good return on that investment when we take the gifts that we share and the time that we have and the dollars that it takes to make it all go, and we put them into this community. Our community takes them back, amplifies those gifts, and returns it to us in the form of a place where we can spiritually thrive and grow. So thank you for your generosity. We all give online. You can go to the website or click on the QR code. And we're going to skip this slide this week. Lisa's not here today, but you'll find out what that's about hopefully next week. So Matt just spoke about election year, tough times, divisiveness, the darkness. And we've been speaking about how important it is to become continually aware and awake to the inner light within each of us and in each other. And we're all very busy people. And this is a very noisy time for us to be alive. So many distractions. But it starts with just one simple step: to become conscious, awake, and aware of the inner light within us. And so we have to get quiet, and we have to be still in order to find that, even just a little bit each day. And last week we started with a Be Still meditation that only took 3 minutes, and I posted it in the app, and I encouraged us all to consider doing that daily this week. I did it. Felt good to me. And so we're going to do that again today. Before we get started, Melissa's actually going to come up and lead us in a chant called Stillness. And she's going to sing it 3 times. She's going to chant it 3 times, and we're all going to chant with her to the extent we feel comfortable doing that. But I encourage you to do that, because what chant is it is a contemplative practice in and of itself, and it is communal. And so when we do it together, it's really a really beautiful thing, and there's an energy that is created when we do that. So Melissa's going to do the chant, and then I'm going to lead us in the Be Still meditation, and then Lindsay's going to do a song for us so that we continue to sit in some contemplative quiet for the next part of the service. So I'd like to encourage everybody to find a comfortable place in your body right now. Take a few deep breaths. Inhale. And exhale. Inhale. Exhale. And one more time. In and out.
Stillness, deep, deep within us. From small beginnings it flows into the living water. The ocean of God. Through our stillness, God moves. Stillness, deep, deep within us. From small beginnings it flows into the living water.
the ocean of God. Through our stillness, God moves. Stillness, deep, deep within us. From small beginnings it flows into the living water. The ocean of God. Through our stillness, God moves.
Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know. Be still. Be.
When I look into the face of my enemy, I see my brother, I see my brother. When I look into the face of my enemy, I see my brother, I see my brother. When I look into the face of my enemy, I see my brother, I see into the face of my enemy, I see my brother, I see my brother. When I look into the face of my enemy, I see my brother, I see my brother. Forgiveness is the garment of our courage, the power to bring the peace we long to know. Open up our eyes to see the wounds that bind all of humankind. May our shattered hearts greet the dawn of life with charity and love. When I look into the face of my enemy, I see my brother, I see my brother. When I look into the face of my enemy, I see my brother, I see my brother. I see my brother, I see my sister, I see my father, I see my mother. When I look into the face of my enemy, I see my brother, I see my brother.
Speaking of brothers, welcome back, Doug. Come on. Well, come on up here. I haven't given you a hug yet this morning.
Oh, thank you. So in the planning document for today's service, under lesson, it says, Doug, give some reflections on your time away, which felt when I was getting ready like a little bit of pressure, because I thought, oh no, I was supposed to be reflecting. So I got a chest cold the first week, so in my mind it kind of gave me a sense of permission to not do reflecting, because I do reflecting in a lot of my life. Really, what I did work on a lot is napping. And I, like 2 times a day napping. I'd made a game of it. Let's see, do I think I could fall asleep again? Let me try. Sure enough, I can. So, instead of reflections, today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about feelings that I felt while I was away. Now, you'll remember me saying before I left that I worked really hard this last couple of years to get our community ready to be given away. We've talked about the founder's trap a great deal and how often we don't transition from a founding leader to whatever comes next. And so I worked hard to get things out of my head and get them out of my guts and put them into systems that other people could enact that would consolidate our values as a community. And an important part of me being away, besides the napping part, was to give the community time to have some kind of a shakedown cruise and see how all that work went. How did we do at getting those things that would consolidate us as a community without primarily depending upon Doug? And how secure are our values, and how well does what we do actually engage our values? Now, it was clear even before I went away that we are much further along along that path than I thought we would be. So my time away, without really planning it, was just feeling feelings and getting out of the way to give you all time and our emerging leadership team time to try things out. And by all accounts, what I've heard so far, I'll hear more this coming week, but by all accounts, well done you. You did a great job. So while I was feeling feelings, you all were enacting community. Well done. So a little bit about the feelings. I've mentioned in the past some of the sadness that goes with realizing how fleetingly short life is. But I've talked about that before, and I've actually been grappling with my mortality since I was in my 20s. So that wasn't really new. For the last couple of years, I could see what was coming, getting the community ready to transition. So there was a little bit of that, but that wasn't a big part of it. The bigger feeling that I felt was a wide open vista kind of feeling, a freedom to explore kind of feeling, a space to imagine kind of feeling. How could I be in our community if I'm not running everything? What could I do in our community? How could I help other communities do some of the things that we've done if I'm not in the cog in the machine making everything go? Now, I've thought these thoughts before, but for a month, I actually felt the feelings that go with that, integrated open possibility into the emotion part of my brain. So that's what I did. I took naps, and I felt feelings and got out of the way so that the community could practice being a community and do that well. And again, went swimmingly well. Turns out I'm really good at napping. Turns out I'm okay at feeling. And turns out you are really good at living our values without me there to make sure. So that's what I did. Any thoughts before we start the lesson? All right. So reading the national news, you heard it again referenced this morning, maybe you feel it too. There's an underlying feeling of impending quiet dread that, oh my God, what is this year going to bring? Given what we've seen in the past, given what polls are saying now, given what we know even from our own family members, how bad is it going to get? And so, as I read the news, I'm sure you too, where there is a tone that's a fair amount of hand-wringing and disquiet, trepidation, plenty of borrowing troubles from tomorrow, things to worry about. So I thought it might be valuable this year to take one lesson, but break it up over the whole year, from now through to November, and to come back to it with a recurrence. A lesson about things we could do to maybe do better than hand-wringing, maybe do better than waiting for some shoe to drop. And if we do that, then if the shoe does drop, we'll be better able to rise to the moment. And if the shoe doesn't drop, we'll also be in a better place. My thought about breaking the lesson into smaller chunks was to give us space and time to integrate some action points into our lives. And to do that personally, because we put it into bite-sized chunks, but also do that collectively. Action points that will help us become the people our time on this earth needs us to be. So it'll be a lesson in a pattern you've heard me talk about before. It'll be a lesson about things that we can do today that if we will do, will make it possible tomorrow to do things that we cannot yet do. Things we can do now that if we will do, will allow us to do better than hand-wringing, better than disquiet. So here's what I mean by bouncing and bouncing back. Here are a couple of well-known quotes from Jesus. Can you read that? Does that show up? All right. Can't read that. Jesus said, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Jesus said, love your enemy and forgive, and you will be forgiven. You've no doubt heard those quotes before. They're often repeated, but they're often presented in a rather ineffective way. They're often presented as commandments. Do these things. Now, anybody who has attempted loving themselves or loving neighbor, forgiving neighbor, or loving enemy, anyone who's attempted to do these things knows these are not decide and it's done kinds of things. If these things are going to happen, they're going to happen as a byproduct. They're going to happen as a result of, an indirect result of doing things that we can do today that if we will do, make it possible tomorrow to do things that we cannot yet do. Things that we can do will change us and make us able to do what we cannot do. Saying, as I experienced with a lot of religious things growing up in church, saying, you have got to love yourself. You have got to love your neighbor. You have got to forgive. You have got to love your enemy. Just not helpful. We can got to until we're blue in the face, but without a process by which those things happen and by which those things unfold, those commandments are actually useless. So, here we got a set of well-understood, well-rehearsed principles, that require deep substantive change in our souls, change that only happens if we do things today to make those things possible tomorrow. So, through the year, I'm going to talk about what those little things are. What are the things that we can do today that if we will do, transform us, make it possible for us to do tomorrow? And to put those things in small enough chunks with enough time in between them to be able to work at integrating them, using the tiny habit approach. One small thing today that is here now, small, doable. And I also hope, given that one of the strengths of being part of a community together is that we can work on these things together, that we'll be able to help one another be steady throughout the year, doing our one small thing and doing it steadily and doing it consistently, so that we can be, over the course of this year, growing into what we could be tomorrow. Things that if we will do, will make it doable to love self, and doable to love neighbor, and doable to forgive neighbor, and doable to love enemy. So today, I'm going to have some brief remarks about that first one. We won't talk about that much this year, about loving self, because it's actually something that we talk about all the time. And we do talk about it because it is essential and it is important. Turns out if we get better at loving self, we also get better at loving neighbor. If we get better at loving self, we also get better at forgiving neighbor. When we can forgive self, we can forgive neighbor. And when loving enemy, usually without us even noticing that it's happening, finally sneaks up on us, it will be rooted in getting better at loving self and getting better at being friends and getting better at forgiving. That's the bouncing back part. Well, that's the bouncing part. The bouncing back part is the forgiving when things have gone sideways. So today, one significant practice that helps us develop our own capacity to love ourselves. Later, we'll talk about specific practices for becoming better friends and specific practices for forgiving. How to be better friends when something goes wrong, when something goes sideways. So, over the year, the lesson's going to follow the same pattern that we follow when we do the loving kindness meditation. We start with something close to home, something very doable. And then we find that place inside of us that it's capable of doing that easy thing. And then we find the internal infrastructure that exists inside of us, and then we build on that. And we build that muscle, we build that capacity, and that allows us to access what is already within us and then strengthen our capacity to live in it. Then, when, often without us seeing it happen, forgiveness sneaks up on us. Or when, often without us seeing it happen, grace sneaks up on us. Or mercy for the other sneaks up on us. We will realize that that capacity that we did not used to have is there because we intentionally developed our capacity to love ourselves. We intentionally developed our capacity to be better friends, and we intentionally developed our capacity for forgiveness. And one day, who knows, loving enemy might not even be off the table. We get better when we develop friendships at empathy. We get better when we develop friendships at doing that essential skill that will eventually help us empathize with our enemy. When we get better at friendship, we get better at open-mindedness. We get better at tolerance. We get better at our capacity to hold on to cognitive dissonance, to hold on to two competing thoughts in our minds at the same time. And we develop those skills, we develop those capacities in the context of our friendships. And then we find that we can look up one day and do that in the context of our adversaries. We develop those capacities in a way that is here now, small, doable with ourselves and our friends. And then in November, if the shit hits the fan or if it doesn't, and we have become more capable to be the kind of people that history needs us to be in our families and in our community, all the better. Now again, here's what the lesson is not saying. Okay, self, start loving self. No. Okay, self, start loving neighbor. No. Okay, self, forgive that person who wronged you. Start loving the enemy. No. But here's what the lesson will be saying. Okay, self, do this thing that you can do, that if you will do tomorrow, who knows? So today, a few words about how we can do better at loving self. And today is really just going to be a simple story. A reminder to be steady in one of our community's core values. Even the most swaggery of us, those of us seemingly born with self-love, even those, every human being struggles to love ourselves. The swaggeriest among us, I know from experience, are actually facing a little bit of a liability because all of that swagger is usually a hidden set of coping strategies to fool ourselves with our swaggeriness that we have self-love. But what we're often doing is just developing a robust set of strategies to keep us unaware of our own not self-love. But maybe that's not you. Maybe you're not one of the swaggery. Maybe you didn't wake up in that brain. Maybe instead you inherited a personality with an onboard inner critic, daily serving up a steady diet of negative thoughts about self. Or maybe your form of not self-love is an unrealistic set of perfect standards, perfect expectations, which then creates a chronic dissatisfaction with what you do or a chronic dissatisfaction with who you are. Or maybe yours is a recurring struggle comparing yourself to other people. Or maybe for you it's getting past wounds that you've sustained along the way. I know some of us have experienced enough rejection, it's hard not to feel that rejection coming, looking forward in advance. Practicing a dose of self-rejection just to get ahead of anticipated rejection. Or for some, our not self-love takes the form of chronic guilt or recurring shame, or body image or not feeling smart enough. Not self-love is a ubiquitous human experience. And as Jesus' paradigm suggests, it's going to be hard to love neighbor. It's going to be hard to be a good friend. It's going to be hard to forgive if our starting place isn't love for self. Now that's a pretty familiar notion. It's hard to love others when we cannot love ourselves or when we do not love ourselves. I heard it when I was quite young. Be surprised if you haven't heard it as well. But what I didn't realize was how insidiously the experience of not self-love undercuts all the things we want. In one instance of that is how insidiously not self-love undercuts community, undercuts a commitment to make community. So I'm starting Common Thread, it's 1995. I'd come from a good church in Los Angeles where people's lives in this good church were not being transformed the way that I imagined a robust spiritual life could transform lives, which was a little bit of a disorienting experience for me because I came here to start a church, but if a really good church isn't doing that kind of transforming of people's lives, what are we doing here? So I started a group. It was a let's listen for the inner voice together group. We would meet on Saturday afternoons. We would sit outside of the old church building, put our chairs in a circle when the weather was good, and we would do spiritual practices together, and we would listen for inner nudges together. I think I mentioned that just a few weeks ago. Well, about 3 or 4 months into this practice, this exercise being together, we did sense an interior nudge. And it happened in kind of a dramatic way. You'll be familiar with it. We're still following this inner nudge 30 years later. Be authentic community together. Be authentic community together. And the way that we experienced that inner nudge being kind of dramatic, we paid very close attention to it. We took it very seriously, and we tried our best. First thing we did is we went out and we learned what are best practices for authentic community. Then we began to practice those best practices for authentic community. And some really beautiful things happened, things that set the trajectory that we are still on today. But a couple months in, as we were getting closer to one another, as we were getting more comfortable being our honest selves, we started getting on each other's nerves. We started pissing each other off, and we started hurting each other's feelings. So, Saturdays in our circle, we were a little bit jarred, confident that we had sensed an interior voice nudge, unable to do the thing the inner voice had nudged. So, what are we going to do about that? When I was just starting out as a minister, I was looking for a spiritual mentor, and I started meeting with an old nun up in the hills above Los Angeles where I was. One of the very first things that she insisted that I do, I think she took one look at my personality and realized there was no sense doing anything else until I learned to meditate. And so I did. Not very steadfastly in those years, but I learned how to do it, and I did it some. So fast forward to our circle of chairs sitting out on the grass, and we couldn't do what we believed was our inner nudge to do, and I thought to myself, maybe it's time that I take meditation seriously. So I found a meditation group here in town, up at St. Francis, that by where our old building was, and I met with a group of older ladies. I was the only male, and I was the only one under the age of 70. So I started meditating with my Catholic lady friends, and I told our Saturday group about it. Now, like a lot of Christians back then, Matt just alluded to this, those folks grew up thinking only Buddhists meditate, and so this whole idea that I was meditating seemed a little bit weird. But it had been kind of a blow, not being able to do what we knew we needed to do. So we meditated together on Saturdays, some of us in the mornings. A few learned walking meditation, stepping and breathing and stepping and breathing. And here's what happened. You've heard it before. Meditation changed us. Meditation is a thing that we could do today that if we will do, will make it possible to do tomorrow what we can't do today. Now, we couldn't articulate the mechanics of what was going on. We couldn't explain to you the why or the how. We just started meditating and realized we were more able to do community. Only later, when I began to study our contemplative tradition, could I articulate the why and the how. Meditation awakens us to oneness. Consistently, people who meditate over time begin to realize everything is connected. We are connected to the interior light, and we are connected one to another. Meditation helps us see that the ego self that believes we are discrete packages of separateness is not the truest self. Our habituated thoughts and our habituated feelings, what Einstein called that very persistent illusion of reality, those things are not us. They are things that we do, our thoughts. They are things that we do, our feelings, but they are not us. Meditation awakens us to the interior sense that at our deepest, beneath the flesh and the blood, beneath our evolutionary brain patterns, we are made of the stuff that the divine is made of. And you can't get more precious and you can't get more loved than that. We couldn't articulate then. All we knew, when we meditate, we're more able to be authentic community together. We're more able to be better at being friends. We have more grace for one another's foibles. We're able to love even when one another is a little bit unlovable. Contemplative practice, meditation, loosens the hold of false self, loosens the hold of habit thinking and habit feeling, loosens the hold of the habit thoughts of not love for self. Those are not reality. They're just deeply ingrained thought habits. The feelings that we have toward ourselves are not reality. They're just deeply ingrained patterns. And meditation loosens the hold of those patterns. Coping strategies that we build up to insulate ourselves from how painful it is to realize we don't love ourselves. Do the thing, get it done, be this kind of person, hold this kind of image. All of those patterns, meditation loosens the hold that they have over us. Meditate, and there emerges within more of a sense that there is a deeper reality and that we carry it within our very selves, that we are a divine center. Meditate, and we become more suspicious of our thoughts. We become more suspicious of our feelings. We can actually stand outside of them and objectify those thoughts and feelings and look at them as something that is not me. And in that position of standing outside of our thoughts and feelings and being able to examine them, we can now choose in a way we could not choose before. Shall I walk down that thought pattern path? Or shall I not? Thoughts and feelings are real. They're just not the realest thing. They're just thoughts, and they're just feelings. They're not reality. They are things that we do. You have heard this before. But we're launching on a year, and we're maybe at a time in history where it's not enough to just know the concept of meditation. We're walking into a time where our society needs us to be meditators, because we need what happens to people when we engage in the steadfast, consistent practice of meditation. Letting go of our reactionary instincts, letting go of the instincts that undercut our ability to love and be loved, to forgive and be forgiven, to befriend and be befriended, that undercut our efforts to want to restitch the torn fabric of community, meditation is the first rung on a ladder of transformation that culminates in us being what this moment in history needs us to be. Now that's about all I'm going to say about the love for self practice, because we're going to be doing what we did this morning all year long. We have a built-in pattern in our community. You'll be invited week after week after week to be steady together in meditative practice. I'll be back in the morning meditation Zoom this week. I was gone in January. We'll have do we still have Tuesday evening meditations? Zoom meditation? Or we won't do Tuesday, but then you did hear that we're going to be back doing centering prayer Sunday mornings. We'll have contemplative Sundays like we had today. There's a consistent invitation to take up the practices of meditation. But I focus on that today, even though it's such a recurring rhythm in our community, to remind us. Meditation is that first rung on a ladder, and that ladder will take us where we want to go this year. Meditation makes us better at being friends. Meditation makes us better at forgiving. And meditation will make us better at loving our enemies. We need more this year than hand-wringing. We need more this year than trepidation and disquiet. So in Dwelling Divine, may we help one another do the things today that if we will do them, will help us become the kind of people tomorrow that our families need us to be, that our friends need us to be, that our community needs us to be, that our nation needs us to be. Amen. It's been a long time, so what do we do next? I've forgotten. I just came to the end and I realized. Welcome. We're glad you're here. Right here, and we're going to get to hear. I'm going to do getting on that Zoom and place for speaking out loud and developing relationship one with another. So I hope you'll do it. You can find the link to the Zoom in the notes, the YouTube notes there. You can also find it on our website, and you'll get to a place where there's a password requested. And if you've waited this long, we'll tell you what it is. It is 14171417. All right, let's dismiss the folks online. If you would, please put your hand on your heart and let us remember as we go, as they go, that we are, every one of us, carriers of the indwelling divine. There is within us everything that we need to navigate this moment in history. Love and joy, peace and patience, the capacity to be good friends, the capacity to forgive, even the capacity to love our enemies. It is within us because we carry the Spirit of the divine within us. And if you would extend your other hand to our city, let's look for opportunities this week to share what is in us with the people that we live and work and go to school with, looking for opportunities to repair and heal our worlds. Amen. God bless you all. You are dismissed. I hope you will head on over to Zoom. The rest of us, what's stirring up in your heart? What are you thinking about? Oh, thank you, Jack. What are you thinking about Angie Scioli?
And I have my journal. I was going to write them instead of say them.
Okay, well, let's hear what you were going to write.
Well, last week, Melissa told me to listen to a podcast. Where's Melissa? Yeah, thank you for that. It's called We Can Do Hard Things. Mm-hmm. And I realized that most of the people sitting here know all the things that I have to say. That's another reason why I maybe should write them in my journal. But they talk about forgiveness. And that forgiveness is largely a matter of zooming out high enough that you can see a perspective of how it wasn't about you. And I thought that that was really powerful. It's not about being the better person. It's not about